This is Five Places, Los Angeles, a podcast by the LA Forum for Architecture and Urban Design. I'm Emmanuelle Bourlier, and I'm thrilled to share my interview with Lisa Teasley about the 5 places that define Los Angeles for her. Lisa Teasley is a writer and an artist, a graduate of UCLA and a Los Angeles native. Her critically acclaimed debut novel, Glow in the Dark, won numerous awards. Her novels Heat Signature and Dive have been praised in publications such as the New York Times Book Review, the Los Angeles Times, and the San Francisco Chronicle. Her news story collection, Fluid, is forthcoming, September 2023. As an artist, Lisa Teasley's last solo retrospective exhibition, Paintrospective, was at the Marie Baldwin Gallery in 2019. Lisa is also a senior editor at Los Angeles Review of Books. Please check the show notes for Lisa's full bio, links to her work, and to all the places she references. A few editorial comments about this episode. It was one of the earliest interviews for this podcast, recorded in December of 2020 during a pandemic lockdown. If you've been listening to other episodes in which 5 places are very clearly delineated, you'll find this interview to be more of a conversational journey through neighborhoods. Lisa's knowledge of Los Angeles runs deep, and I found it beautiful to discover it through her stories. The video available on our YouTube channel includes images of Lisa's amazing paintings. If you're listening to the audio version, I want to mention that when we talk about Laurel Canyon, the book I'm holding is Lisa's own novel, Dive, which I highly recommend. Now let's dive in.
Oh, I love all the books behind you.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It's years of it. Plus, with my job as an editor, I get so many books that literally every week I'm taking crates of books places. Like I anonymously shove books in library slots. I take, like it's kind of it's weird, but it's kind of become a nightmare. I've told the publishers to stop sending them, that let me request them, but there's still enough that come that it's 3 boxes. So so I keep what I can, but there's no storage space in this house, none whatsoever. So I'm always purging. So that's a and it's a good lesson, I think, or not lesson, but practice to purge and to give stuff away, and
Yeah, but it's also so nice to have books around.
Yes, absolutely. So my favorites, yes.
Yes. Shall we dive in then with a few questions about LA? And the very first question is just simply, how long have you lived in LA?
So I was born here in LA, and when I was 1, we moved to Durham, North Carolina, but we were there for only 6 years and came right back. So I was here in time for 2nd grade. And so other than living in New York in the 90s and a year in Bangkok last year and the beginning of this year, I've been in LA the whole rest of the time. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And sidebar, I lived in New York in the 90s too.
Oh, you did? Wow. Yes. How amazing. We
so 94 to 99, roughly? When were you there?
I was there 92 to 99.
That's amazing. Yeah. We overlapped.
Yes. So I was in the Village, and then Williamsburg before it became what Williamsburg is now. I mean, any neighborhood they're all different now. And then ended up in Soho. And because I needed space as an artist, there were a few apartments left that were, in Soho that were just for artists, and you needed to be certified. And so Julian Schnabel certified me as a painter, and we got this amazing loft space. So I had all this space to paint. So that was fabulous. Unlike what I have now. So I just have a little bit of the living room is my paint space.
How much do you paint versus writing?
It varies in terms of what's pulling me more. So if I'm working on a specific book project, then I'm focused on that. But if not, then it becomes all about the painting. And then when there isn't a show that I have to get paintings to, or I don't have a story deadline, then there's a balance that I'm not sure how to measure, how it happens. It's when I don't feel like sitting at the desk and I want to be expressing myself in color and form. And
that's so beautiful that you go between those two modes. Like they must enrich each other tremendously.
They really do. Now I'm, not sure, what I'm going to stick to. I always have quite a few different stories or long projects going, but there's always a painting on the easel. So so I'm painting.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, my second question was what brought you to LA, but you were born here. If you were born here, what brought your parents or your grandparents here? Like how far back does your family go?
Well, my grandmother came here, my maternal grandmother came here from Panama, and she came with her second daughter. She had 7 kids, and each one followed shortly after. So my mother, who was the baby, came when she was 22, and my mother met my father, who had come here from he was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but he was going to school he went to Fisk in Nashville, and his first job was with the space program. And so he was computing trajectories to the moon in the space program, and then left it because it was an all-white world. He left it for Golden State Life Insurance Company, which was Black owned. So my mother was working there as a secretary, and he was moving on his way up, and he when he saw her, he said he had dreamed of her. He told her he had dreamed of her. So it was,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's the history of my parents.
But your dad was basically a rocket scientist, it sounds like, or is.
So he was a math genius who went to college when he was 15, and he could have gone in any direction with the math, but he was picked up by the space program, and so was, for lack of a better word, became a hidden figure there. And there was a visiting German scientist who befriended my dad and said, okay, there was this meeting that you weren't included in. And what he was hearing about my dad, like the snickering and the ceiling they were trying to keep in place over him, this scientist let him know about. And so then that's when, and dad had sensed those things, of course, but that was just sort of the icing on the cake, and that gave him the impetus to leave. So basically the rest of his career was, he started there as an actuary and then moved up all the way up to CEO. And and that building is still there. The Black architect Paul Williams. So much of the Adams district is, there are so many buildings that are in the historic registry and are being preserved, thank goodness. And that's one of the neighborhoods that I want to bring up as my 5 that define me, because it's so rich in history. And I've spent so much time there because my grandmother lived there, and we were there every Sunday. So,
oh, lovely.
Yeah.
What an interesting story of your dad's, to leave a very unfair situation and then work his way to CEO.
Right. And back then too, looking for a place to live as a Black man was heartbreaking. Some of the stories that are looking for a place in Santa Monica. He was just talking about this a couple of months ago. I started to interview him about his life because of a post that I did that people said, it was a Father's Day post, that we need his story, and they said, and make him tell tell you his story. So in that we were talking about neighborhoods, and he was saying how when he and my mom pulled up to look at a place that, you know, that was for rent, you know, the guy came running out and was like, no, 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 not for coloreds. You know, it was like that.
That blatant.
That blatant, yeah.
Forget redlining. This was arm waving.
Yes, right.
That is,
yeah.
it's
so,
unfathomable. What? So
well,
what
you know
year
what?
was that?
But the thing is, the sad thing is, I'm going to jump to that. Well, I live in Venice. I moved here 6 years ago after selling my house in Laurel Canyon, and it was hard to find a place here. And I had the same kinds of experiences, not you know, not using the words, but, you know, stuff that actually made me break down and cry. And then a couple of months later, my sister and her family, she's a civil rights attorney, and she got a job with George Soros's Open Society Foundation. And so since they were moving to New York, they said, come, you know, rent our house here. So that cry, you know, that desperate, came true. My sister's house. But it's so sad that however many places that I looked at where I spoke to someone on the phone, a landlord on the phone about a duplex, and we got on so well on the phone, talking for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. He said, you're going to love it here. By the end of the call, that's what he was saying. He arrived, all excited. He would not look me in the eye. He just, the whole time, you know, he said, you know, of course you have to fill out a credit report. And I said, of course, you know, and an application. And the whole time just looking down at the ground. And then I filled everything out. I dropped it off. Oh, I also ran into the people who were moving out, and they said, you're going to love it here. And we heard all about you because we had that chat on the phone. We just like had gotten on. So then when I called him and said, have you looked over my application? He just hung up on me.
Oh my God.
So this happened 6 years ago in Venice, you know, and all that to say that I don't love my neighborhood because I don't feel welcome. I still don't. So when the opportunity to move happens, I will. I don't know how I got off on all of this, you know, but
no, but
it's a reality.
I got a stomachache just hearing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. So anyway.
So, and you've been there for 6 years, but given the opportunity, you would move. Yeah.
And the question is where?
Where?
Yeah. Most of my friends live in the Silver Lake Echo Park area, but they've lived there for, you know, at least a couple decades and would otherwise be priced out. So but with what's happening now, like right now, the house across the street, the for sale sign just went up 2 days ago. And so much of the neighborhood, there are, you know, for the buildings, for lease signs, you know, and that's the result of COVID. And we'll see what happens to LA. We'll see what happens.
You're living in Venice and you don't feel at home there.
No, I just, you know, it's more when someone comes to visit and, you know, and they want to walk to the beach or walk to the canals, or, you know, I have one neighborhood pal who comes and picks me up and we walk through the canals to the beach. So I enjoy it more with others.
Have you felt more at home? And well, maybe we'll get to this in other parts of the city. Maybe.
Yes. Well, right now, the contrast being in the Adams district, Imogen, you met Imogen, who was also in the show, my kid, my progeny, as you could say. their pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and so it's not about daughter or son. It's so, but it also feels strange to say kid. So I'll just say my Imogen is now visiting from Oakland and staying Adams District, and we skateboard there almost every day because
I love it.
The streets are wide and flat, and I have a longboard, and even though they love to do tricks and everything, we can just skate through the streets, and there isn't much traffic, and it's so comfortable, and it's like being a kid being at my grandmother's house.
Yeah, that's
so
amazing.
There I feel really, and it's very well mixed, so I'm very comfortable there. And then I grew up in Baldwin Hills, so that's where my dad still is with my youngest sister. And that has changed tremendously because that was known, it's changed throughout the many decades, but I would say from the early 70s through, I guess, the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, it was sometimes referred to as the Black Beverly Hills. But when I go to visit Dad and my sister, it's predominantly white now. It's still an odd sight coming and seeing, the different landscape in terms of people on my way to the house. And so, that's very interesting. And I also hike quite a bit with a friend in Kenneth Hahn Park. And that's a beautiful mix of everyone who lives, in the larger area, whether it's, from Inglewood, View Park, Lamert Park. I love that walk, and there's a new bridge that goes across, and so it's Baldwin Hills overlook to Kenneth Hahn, and it's lovely, And then there are the people doing the steps, considering that sort of part of Culver City and where the steps are. So that park is very much LA to me.
I love that place too. It's fairly close to our office and the Culver City skate park where my son used to skate. So, I've done the steps a few times with him, or hiked a bit around there, and you get these amazing views, and it's just incredible that you're in the middle of the city.
It is. Yeah.
I love it there.
Yes, I love it there too.
Yeah.
And I really was in love with Laurel Canyon. I lived there for 13 years. I was in love with this house. The backyard was the woods, and it was 3 sides glass. So you felt like you were in a tree house. You were just in the trees. And it was really magical. And I didn't find out until after being there, like maybe it was a year before I sold the house. I found out that it was Led Zeppelin's party house in the 60s. There's so much musical history in Laurel Canyon,
Yeah.
And the Papas, Joni Mitchell, Frank Zappa, The Doors. You could still feel there's that vibe. And also it's got like a dark undercurrent of, while I was there, a body was found. This was right before I finished my first novel.
So I've been reading.
Yes, exactly.
So everything that you're saying right now, this Laurel Canyon vibe, and like, I'm very much, yes, it's so good. It is so good.
Yeah, so the neighborhood inspired it. Yeah, and the Wonderland murders, because Imogen was going to Wonderland, and we would walk them to school, and then walk up Wonderland. We were on Lookout Mountain, and then walking up Wonderland, where the Wonderland murders took place, that house was always for lease. And the friends that knew of people that had gone in, or had known of people who had even rented without knowing, said that there really are ghosts. I mean, that you can feel that presence of, however many how many bodies were found in that place. So there's that undercurrent too. And then there's this beautiful, anyway, that I can feel of the indigenous peoples who live there. I mean, I kind of felt like, I don't know if I'm going to sound crazy, but I felt like I could hear the voices. And so,
amazing.
yeah, so that I was so in love with that house that I feel like I'm a ghost in the house. You know, like in another timeline, I'm going to be a ghost in that house, you know. And
well, maybe your spirit is there.
yes, my spirit is there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The neighbors were all so lovely. And walking around there was never that feeling of who are you or what are you doing, or, you know, there were awkward encounters, you know.
Is that, you were talking about the native spirit, is that Tongva land? Because most of LA is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I still miss it, but I wanted to move to this side of town because I wanted to be far away from all of my habits, you know, just like, because I did a lot of shopping. Fairfax, the street of Fairfax and Pico, where my sister's studio is. She's a designer of accessories. She and my mom did that. My mom passed away last year, but up until that point, they've been in that same studio since at least like late 90s, I'd say. And so, you know, visiting them and walking around there, and then also just and after being a club kid in you know, dancing, I would always go to Cantors, you know, and still every once in a while. I mean, of course, everything's closed right now, but there are just so many spots that I love that are still hanging in there.
Yeah. But you chose to take yourself
take myself out of those environments. So it wouldn't be that heart tug, you know.
Was it to focus more on your work?
It was just to try and fall in love with another part of the city, is what I was thinking. And plus, when I lived there, I organized a weekly beach volleyball game. So I was at the beach every Sunday. So I thought, you know, this will be great to just be there. But the truth is, I was at the beach more when I lived over there than I am now. I tend to, just hunker down in the house and work.
That's brave to transplant yourself, you know, from a place you love and just say, I'm going to fall in love with something else.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there'll be, even if you're not falling in love with Venice right now, you have such a, I don't know, the word luminous keeps coming to mind, but you have such a luminous, amazing spirit. I can't imagine that you won't find, you know, the place where you feel deeply connected.
Yeah. Thank you. It's what I'm more putting energy toward, you know, finding a place.
Should we talk about your 5 places? The 5 places that define.
So the Adams District and Laurel Canyon and then the Baldwin Hills area that I'm including Leimert Park and the Crenshaw District, and then downtown LA. I love downtown, and I have loved it all my life, from what it was when I was a kid till now, even though you know, so much of the overbuilding, there's almost never a time where you don't hear construction going here in this neighborhood. And there's that feeling of, even if you're not hearing the construction, but you see it as you're approaching downtown. You know, if you're a native, then it looks like, look at how it's been so built up, you know. And I know that many New York transplants find find it comfortable. New Yorkers find the downtown to be a little more like New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true in certain areas, but I love that the train station is still that gorgeous train station that it is. In Chinatown, I love, it's changed a lot as well, but still, there's that flavor of Chinatown is still there. And I used to have a lot of habits of the flower, getting flowers after dancing late at night, and then there was this place called Gorky's, which was a Russian all night omelet place, and staying up late enough to get flowers in the morning.
Oh, how nice.
I've not done that since it's become what it is now. So when I'm thinking of seeing concerts at the Orpheum, and then there were certain spots, certain restaurants, certain dive bars. Like a friend just sent me a poem today that he wrote about Hank's Bar downtown, and I was thinking, I can't remember if I've actually been in it, and I looked it up, and yeah, it's been there since however long. There are these places like Musso and Frank's and the Frolic Room on Hollywood Boulevard that are still there downtown. And so just to see their faces, their character still there among all the newer buildings, the kind of, I don't know, like these huge condos that have changed the face of it. I mean, with all the people, it's more exciting. And my cousin lives near Olive and 8th, and I ran into him, by surprise, just like catching him, getting a burger after hiking over the park, and that kind of thing may not have happened. Well, it wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have been living there. And he showed me his downtown, and the gallery that I had a solo show in last year is on Spring and 8th, and that area feels really juicy,
Yeah.
And so different from when, for example, I was an intern. I went to UCLA, and I was an intern at the LA Times when it was on Spring Street, and we would go to lunch in Little Tokyo most of the time, and just so many changes. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I still find that skeleton of what was there before, and am embracing the new, and the bustle of people. That is really nice. And those who I know who live downtown now said it was very weird when the pandemic hit, on how it felt for the first couple of months. One friend was saying she felt intimidated just to walk her dog, just with how desolate it felt. She felt like she was a strange, horror movie.
Apocalyptic,
yeah.
Do you have memories when you were very young going to downtown? Would you have gone there as a child?
Let's see, what habits did we have downtown? Because we tended to go, my dad would take us more to the marina a lot for dinner, like Fisherman's Village and Sunday brunches there. Downtown was something that I think I got to know more from the ages of like 18 to 24, 25. It was more of a hangout after.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So but I think that there were school field trips like to Olvera Street and that kind of thing. But but my memories are much more late teens, early 20s. Yeah, so I love downtown in all of its iterations. It's LA to me too, and it's a part of as well Echo Park and and Silver Lake, that whole stretch together. I mean, those are all very different neighborhoods now, but for me, just like when I went hiking in Griffith Park maybe 2 Saturdays ago, then I went through downtown and I went through Silver Lake and Los Feliz, and I mean, since I'm a native, it's all sort of, I just put my arms around most of the city. It feels good. It felt good to be out. It felt good to be on that side of town. Yeah.
I love that. I love that sentiment, because I think a lot of people come to LA and it feels unwieldy.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so large and there's so many possibilities, and it's hard to get to know all of it. So I think many people will kind of find their own, area where they're comfortable, or maybe a few areas.
Right.
But
Right.
I love that you think of it like this, this whole.
Right. And I used to feel like being a traveler and then meeting people who know LA only through movies and television, their ideas, I would find, would be so stereotypical, and really one of the only shows I can think of is 6 Feet Under, that I felt was a little more what LA is, in the sense that every week, every episode was a different family from a different part of the city. So you got to see these many cultures that live here that were never, just glossed over in film and television for the most part. Like we're finally starting to see a little bit of change in that, but
Yes, but it's slow. Change is
so slow.
so slow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that reminds me that I have a few books here that are my favorites about LA. The first one is Mike Davis's City of Quartz. This is just like an excellent history, published in 1990. So of course there's been so much change since that, but this is a lot of detail about how the city came to be what it is.
That was required reading. Sorry to interrupt you. That was required reading in architecture school.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Linnell George, who's an old friend, but who, LA readers know from the LA Times, fantastic writer.
Yes.
This came out, at least, I would say, well, maybe 2 years ago. And it's all about her LA and her photographs as well. And it's a beautiful look at inside LA. Like, and it, it's also, I see it sort of like her arms around LA and the changes. There's a lot of mourning in it as well for what has changed. And another by Mike Davis that just came out some months ago with Mark Weiner, Set the Night on Fire, LA in the 60s, all about the protests. And this, I'm not finished with this book, but it is fantastic. This is fantastic tome.
It looks like an amazing read, and a long one.
A long one and fascinating one.
And relevant, right?
And very, very relevant. So relevant. And then lastly, this book, Living the California Dream, African American Leisure Sites During the Jim Crow Era. Mm-hmm. This book, for the library, I moderated a conversation with Allison Rose Jefferson, who talks about what it was like for Black people in the city, the stories of leisure sites, Santa Monica, sites like what they called the Inkwell, and sort of back talking about with my dad, trying to look for a place there. Stories about Manhattan Beach, a lot of stuff that I didn't know about, but you know, some of it I did, but it's a fascinating read.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are interested in LA and from the point of view of you know, African Americans, it's
Thank you so much for curating that collection of books. That's wonderful. I'll include the links.
so bookish. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yes, the links to that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll include the links for sure, as well as links to your books.
Thank you.
I really enjoy your writing. I haven't read fiction in a long time, and it's doing me a lot I good to
thank you so much. I'm
take
so
a break
honored that
and
you're
read some fiction. I get completely sucked in. And I think about, like, you'll write, even just in the beginning, there are some details about things happening on the construction site. And I think, like, did you grow up around construction sites or something to get to understand that the detail of what happens there?
My partner at the time had worked at this, so the character of Ray is partly based on a lot of the stories that he told me, and he's such a colorful storyteller that I retained a lot of the stories and wrote it while we were together as well. And he would read, when he would come back from work, he'd read the pages aloud, and I could hear the voice and he could hear the voice. And that was an amazing experience to have. That I don't have that, like a reader who will read it out loud so that I can hear it. I read my work out loud to myself, but I never had a partner who would, you know, other than him, that would, you know.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So whenever we talk on the phone, he's back in Michigan, but he still talks about his days in an oral storyteller way that is just unlike anyone else I know. So so that was a big gift. Big gift. So I felt like, yeah. And but we did do things like some of the things, the like rafting, canoeing, and all of those adrenaline sports that are in the book, I experienced. But other than that, though, I do imagine myself as other people, and you know, have an experience in that.
It's an amazing skill to have. I think the world might be a better place if more of us had that skill.
You know, I believe that we all have the great capacity for empathy. It's just, you know, it can be socialized out of us. It can be shut down. You know, it has to do with not being afraid to open the heart, and it's understandable why so many people close up. You know, it's because it's hard. I found in living in New York that I sit on the subway, I would try not to take on other people's weather, but I would look look into the person's eyes across from me. And my native New Yorker friends would say to me, "You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to look over their heads," you know, and even when walking, I couldn't do it. I still felt affected, you know, so I would sometimes avoid. There were days where I didn't want to get on the subway for that reason, that I was taking others' weather. But I find that I'm doing the same thing in any subway, like whether it's like Shanghai, Bangkok, London, Paris, all of these populated cities, Berlin, you know, it's you know, you're experiencing it with everyone. And if you're porous like I am, you know, it's a little bit I want to stay, you know, sort of I don't know, unaffected by whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Attitudes or
porous is such a great way to describe that. Well, you're a writer, so obviously. Oh, So I'm normally a very linear thinker.
Yes.
But we've been having this wonderful kind of free rambling conversation and I've lost track. Have you named 5 places?
Yes, that's what I named the Adams District, Laurel Canyon, Venice, where I live, downtown, and Echo Park, Silver Lake, although I didn't talk about that area, I don't think.
Do you have particular memories there or associations?
I still love walking around the lake, Echo Park Lake. It's been sweet, the additions, even though I haven't been on the Swans, it's sweet how it's become such a gathering place. I remember when it was pretty much empty. There's a loveliness to that. And then also walking around the Silver Lake Reservoir, and then in all the restaurants but I associate it more with being at friends' houses for parties and dinners. And so it's like a second home, the neighborhood. But my friends who have been there such a long time do, they can't help but complain about feeling priced out by, a lot of the places. It's expensive now.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, housing is one of the biggest problems facing LA.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with all of these.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem as though there are initiatives to work on the problem, but as we said earlier, change is slow, and meanwhile, there are heartbreaking, lapses going on.
Yes, so many people in the streets, everywhere. And that is heartbreaking. That is heartbreaking to see so many people on the streets. Yeah.
I've been thinking about, I don't think we can find an answer to this right now, but I've been thinking about this podcast series and how, it came about through the LA Forum and through this idea of understanding the city, understanding Los Angeles, and instigating dialogue about Los Angeles. And I was very curious to create this or to see the city through the eyes of different people and create this kind of living documentary.
Right.
But being a few interviews in now, and everyone has such a different perspective, and yet there are a few recurring places and a few recurring themes.
Yes.
And I have this desire to try to find a bigger purpose to it,
Sure, that will come about organically.
The project just started as a kind of an idea, and I thought I'll just dive in and kind of see what happens. So I hope you're right. I hope that organically some kind of positive impact.
Right.
Yeah, it's very thought-provoking to have these conversations. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your lifelong experience.
Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this.
I would love to talk to you more. I mean, I don't know if you're up for it, but maybe one day I could meet you and we could go for a beach walk or something.
Fabulous.
Because we'd be outdoors.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be really, I would love that.
I would love that too. Are there any other thoughts that you want to add or anything else?
I love LA. I will always love LA no matter what's going on. I think it's home. It's home to me.
Lisa and I did get together for a wonderful beach walk, and we're planning an urban hike in downtown LA next. To learn more about Lisa's work, her art, and the books and places mentioned in our conversation, please check out the show notes. To hear more stories of the places that define Los Angeles, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also visit us online at 5places.la. 5 Places is produced by Annalie Garakani, Quinn Wynn, and me, Emmanuelle Bourlier, for the LA Forum for Architecture and Urban Design. We recorded on Chumash, Kizh, Tongva, and Mi'kmaq land. Thank you for listening.